So, hello. Today we are talking with Assaph Mehr, and we are going to have some good fun chatting about books and whatnot. Okay, so tell me a bit about yourself and what you're sort of working on or have recently finished.
All right. Good day, EG, and everyone watching. I'm an historical fantasy author. I write books at the intersection of ancient Rome, fantasy, and detective mysteries.
Ooh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah. Think of it sort of as urban fantasy detectives like Jim Butcher's Dresden File, but on a background of ancient Rome.
Okay.
Ancient Rome-like world.
Okay. So, what period of ancient Rome? Are we talking start of the Roman Empire or end?
When I started to write, I was reading a lot of Roman historical fiction by people like Lindsay Davis and Stephen Saylor.
Yeah.
And I was very much afraid that I would never measure up to the amount of research that they do. So I very loosely based I created a secondary world and very loosely based it on the late Middle Republic. So somewhere between the Punic and the start of the decline of the Roman Empire with the murder of the Gracchi brothers.
Yeah.
So the time when Rome was particularly stable. Of course, once I've done that, I've decided to play a lot with other things. And, because you can. So,
well,
what if that happened? What if that happened?
No one's around to complain much.
Yes. All the people I quote have been dead for a couple of thousand years. So
yeah, well, one would hope. But okay,
well,
so
there are zombies. So yeah, some of them do come back.
yeah. So have you got something that you're currently working on, or has this been released recently?
Yeah,
or perhaps be released?
I've released my first novel, Murder in Absentia, about 4 years ago.
Okay.
The second novel, Innomina, last year.
Mm-hmm.
With a quick follow-up novella.
Okay.
And now I'm about halfway through drafting the third full-length novel.
Ooh. All right. So tell us a little bit about this series. I'm very excited to hear about your characters.
Sure. I took basically what I like to read. So, like I said, I've been reading a lot of historical fiction set in Rome. And if you're familiar with Lindsay Davis or Stephen Saylor or David Wishart or any of those, they write sort of hard-boiled style detectives.
Yes.
The classic detectives from the Pulp Fiction, etc., which I like to read anyway. I grew up on.
Yeah.
From Agatha Christie to Raymond Chandler.
Oh, the good ones.
Yeah. So, but set obviously in ancient Roman times.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always loved fantasy. So came from the classic like Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, to more modern things like Jim Butcher or Richard Mack or anything great. Scott Lynch. So I wanted to combine everything. So I had this idea for the mystery. It was kicking a can at the back of my head for over a decade. So I kind of, okay, it'll be a detective. You'll have sort of this kind of case. It started as a locked room mystery.
Ooh.
Evolved a little bit to a murder that couldn't have happened. And I started to write. It was okay. I'll make it based on ancient Rome because that's what I like. I'll take this idea of a detective who investigates the occult cases, but not in a modern setting, in a fantasy historical setting. So I knew where I started. I knew where it should end because I knew what the mystery was about, and I started writing everything in between.
Aha! It's the in-between bits that are always the tricky ones.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, so for the fantasy bit, I would imagine you have a fair amount of the Roman mythological situations going on, but do you have any other cultures, mythology, or fantasy creatures, or whatnot involved?
Well, obviously I try to borrow directly as much as I can from Roman mythology. Mm-hmm. One of my pet peeves is people treating Roman mythology as Greek with Latin names. It's not. Exactly. It's there's something called the Interpretatio Graeca. When one culture met another one in ancient times, they say, your Zeus is my Jupiter. So we have something to talk about. So they did it with the Greek, they did it with the Celts, and but it's not the actual, that's not the root of the mythology. So
a little bit different, yeah.
Yeah, it did. Well, of course, it's much more complicated than that because the Romans, being Latins, had the Greek next door in southern Italy and the Etruscan right above them, who did trade a lot with the Greeks and bought things, and all those cultures they predate to the Proto-Indo-European cultures. And then after the Second Punic War, they started a wave of Greco-Fida that reached its heights in the empire, where gods really were conflated with one another, and mythologies were combined. So yes, it's not. So we said, the Roman is not quite it's not the Greek. It's not. It has its own idiosyncrasies, but then again, you can't separate them cleanly either.
Right. So, yeah.
As for how I use it in my books, I take the approach that the gods are not the Greek, gods with human character and direct involvement. They're more the noumena, the divine spirits.
Yeah. Okay.
Out there in the world.
Interesting. That's
yeah, and there are mythological creatures. Not a lot, but when you have Romans loved gladiatorial games. They did do beast hunts with anything from bears to lions and giraffes that they imported from Africa. So mine has one with a griffin.
Awesome, fantastic. Sounds griffin hunting. I imagine that would.
It's the logical conclusion, right?
Yeah, naturally. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so how much research did you have to do? Because this sounds like you've put a fair amount of both sort of a history degree and a classics degree into one series.
I wish. My degree is actually in computer science.
Yeah, linguist.
I should have probably gotten to studying classics and linguistics. That might have made my life very different. I treat writing as an excuse to research a period I love. I love reading about it. When I read historical fiction, I don't just read the books and move on. I actually go on and read the associated material.
Right.
Wikipedia is good for starting material, and then you go to the reference section at the bottom and say, "Ooh, that looks like a good book," and there and start reading it.
Yeah.
So I picked up a lot of nonfiction.
Okay.
And I sat down to research, and it wasn't specifically for writing the series. It was just because I enjoyed it. That was something I've been doing for years.
Right.
And then when I started writing, obviously there came particular questions. So I started doing things a lot more thoroughly, a lot more targeted research. Looking for particular things. The second novel is about curses.
Oh.
So there was a Roman practice of curse tablets.
Yeah.
You would take a sheet of lead, usually. At least those are the that survives mostly till today. Scratch someone's name out on it, and
I've read about this, although I've read about it more in the context of ancient Egypt than Rome, but it's similar.
It was prevalent all over the Middle East and the Mediterranean. So there's a huge trove of them that found in England, in Bath.
Oh, really?
Yep, and they have hilarious things like may the goddess Solis strike the person who took my towel with diarrhea till he dies or returns the towel.
People were so creative. I mean, wow.
Yeah. So you think about it, and it's like it's the common folk often. It's not something that the high and mighty society that we normally read from practice and condone it. In fact, witchcraft was generally illegal, but it was the common folk who were pissed. It's like, somebody stole my towel at the bath, and I cannot even go to the authorities because there are hardly any and they wouldn't care. And I did my justice, damn it. I'll pray to the goddess. So there was, and that comes back to the question before about magic. The treatment of, or the attitude of people towards gods and magic can be developed as ubiquitous. It was in everything. It was contractual. So if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. So if you strike down the person who stole my towel, I will donate something. I'll give a coin, and it was done on a grander scale as well. Rome for gods protect the city of Rome and verify its glory, and will sacrifice bulls and whatnot to appease the gods. And not so much to appease, to
right,
pay our own side.
Even. Yeah.
So I try to preserve that kind of attitude in the novels. But of course,
sorry, you've preserved this idea in your novels about sort of a fair trade system. That sounds fascinating.
And I try to maintain this attitude of the people in a book. But then, of course, there is real magic in the world, so those chaos tablets can work.
Right.
And they can cause horrible effects on people.
Okay, so as far as the storyline goes, for the mystery, do you have just one perpetrator per book, or is there an overarching villain? Because I am awfully fond of a good villain.
Yes. The first book was a particular mystery, so it was written in a particular way, building up towards it. And then in the second book, he comes up across someone else. It's a different case. So people that he worked for or worked with in the first book kind of referred him to the case, to the second one. So his career is blooming, as we say, is growing. But that villain in the end of the book does get to reappear in the third book I'm writing now.
Ooh. Okay. It's overarching.
That was something when I started, I wrote it, and it determined a lot of things about how things can progress and how it should end and all of that. So people need to live to stay a pain in the butt.
Yeah, you don't want to give too much away there.
I'm trying not to give too many spoilers, but
well, how fun. Okay, so sort of stepping aside from your series here, how did you actually get into writing novels?
I've been reading since I was about 5. My sister taught me, and I had to argue with the librarian that I'm not in school, but I still get my own library card. And I finished all the, Enid Blyton and everything else on the kids section by the age 10. So I bought my sister's shirts, out at uni at the time. I'm out of the house, so I bought her library card and started borrowing from the adult section. At which point I discovered the fantasy shelf. Started reading at the left and went all the way to the end of the right, reading every single sci-fi and fantasy book I could find. And I've kind of always wanted to see my name in print. It was something I thought I'd love to do, but thought, I'd do it when I retire, when I have more time. Or something like that.
Yeah.
And then 4 years ago, my wife very randomly complained one evening that she finished the last book that she wanted to read, and she doesn't know what she wanted to read. Doesn't have anything that she wants to read again. So okay, and she went to sleep and started writing. Like I said, at that point, the idea behind the mystery was kicking a can in the back of my head for about a decade. So I kind of knew that. But originally, it was a bit more, your standard medieval setting, more like Fritz Leiber, Lankmar, the Fafa with the Grey Mouse. But since I was reading a lot of, like I said, Roman historical detectives at the time, so I'll combine it because I like that. So the first thing I did was download the software for writing novels. And that very night I started to write, and I kept writing at nights and emailed my wife the first chapter and asked, found this online, I think you might like it, do you think you'll read it? And she responded, that was you, isn't it? How did you know? I know you, it was you. But I kind of kept going, and I finished the first draft in 4 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was intense. And then I published the book, then I learned my lesson, and then I republished the book. Edited. It's a learning curve. And we had a baby in between, and the second book took a bit longer because of that. But I finished writing that, got it edited up front. So starting with beta readers, then professional editors, then copy editing properly. I have a graphic designer that does all my covers, so he maintains the series for the thing and everything. So published that last year, and like I said, now just writing instead. So yeah, in between I wrote short stories that are freely available on my website.
Same genre, same sort of style?
Yeah, they're exactly the same world and protagonists. They're sort of
sure.
mini cases.
Oh,
right?
Fun.
Yeah, it was, well, one, I wanted to keep writing while I was busy editing and trying to figure out all the book layout stuff.
Yeah.
And two, I thought it'll be a great way to introduce readers to the series. So, especially as a new author, nobody is like, oh, why should I invest in it? Forget the $3 or $4 of the book. Why should I invest 10 hours in my reading time in something that I don't know will be good enough? So it's like, yeah, okay, try this. It'll take you about 15 minutes to read a short story. And then, if you like it, there's a whole book.
That's a good strategy. I have a few shorter pieces on my website of varying genres, but definitely like writing the novels the best.
Yeah. Oh, I like. Well, it's a different skill set, writing short fiction versus longer ones, and I think it's an interesting exercise. So a lot of people, well, not a lot, but I got one advice after I finished my first draft was, why don't you practice on short stories? And it's like, now that I know a bit more, it's like, okay, if you want someone who's saying, oh, look at my attempt at photography, you tell them, well, go study drawing. Yes, that will teach them about composition and light and shadow, but not quite what they're looking for. Writing long form and short form is a different skill set. Yes, it's words on a page, but it's done differently. So anyway, those short stories, they're great because I can keep sharing them on social media and reminding people, oh yeah, look at that. And
well, I'll go have a look. Sounds great.
Then I did the novella as well.
Okay, sure. Good fun.
Set out to do something in between. A bit longer, but as well as a novel too.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit sideways here. You said you're doing computer science, so I imagine you're somewhat familiar with the AI industry. What do you think its effect on writing is going to be?
On creative writing? It's interesting. So there are articles I've seen about AI researching writing. So
I've seen similar.
Actually, a blog post I put up yesterday mentioned a link to that. So there ran an AI on a very large corpus of books from Gutenberg, identified essentially 6 main arcs. It does it by analyzing emotional states based on word usage. So there are basically 6 types of stories, how emotions progress in an arc.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's interesting. You wouldn't think some of the comparisons are the same, but they have a lot of novels that looks completely dissimilar, have the same arc. But it's not something that you go out consciously trying to do when you're writing. Yes, there's an arc that you want to call, and everyone knows the hero's journeys or whatever it is. Okay, well, maybe you do set out to, because if you know what your novel is about, then you do set out that, right?
I don't. No.
Well, if you're plotting, then you're just one step closer than a pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants. But either way, when you finish that manuscript, that's when you really know what the book is about, and that's where the hard work actually starts, because that's when you need to start editing to give it shape. As going back to AI, even if as an author you say, okay, this is going to be a rags to riches, like a Cinderella kind of story. People's going to start out low, they're going to reach high, crash, and then shoot back up, right? That's classical. I don't know if an AI can generate, definitely not today, but I don't know at what point an AI generate.
I know people who work for NVIDIA who does, a lot of the AI stuff, and have heard that they are trying to get AI to generate creative writing, but at this point it's more or less gibberish.
Yeah. So right now, getting an AI to pass the Turing test is a challenge, and they've only one that sort of scraped it, imitated an emo teenager. So everybody, okay, yeah, we'll forgive those answers because obviously it's an immature person, but that's just typing at the terminal.
Yeah.
But doing something more complex about coming up with characters and tracking subplots, etc., I think definitely at our current state is very far away.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that quintessentially human is coming up with, ooh, that looks interesting. Let's go and explore that.
Yeah.
You can use an AI to do that, but that original idea, that original spark.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. The problem is when it becomes sort of formulaic and it then produces the formulaic novels. And so you get, the mass market paperbacks that you see for 99 cents or whatever it is. And
to be fair, those authors are making a lot more money than me. By churning out the same plot and the same style of every couple of months there's a new book, a new release, and they're writing 100 books, and they make a lot more money than I do. But
it seems to be so popular, and yet I don't understand.
I wouldn't rag or go against those authors. They're obviously fulfilling need in the market.
It's impressive to be able to take a formula and make it original enough that people want to read the new book, and then being able to turn out something similar every time. That's impressive, but I can't do it.
Exactly. So I think we each find our own niche, our own stories that we want to tell, our own way of writing. And some people, it works really well that they do the rapid release, books that are sort of similar-ish, and give and their readers know what to expect, and they keep coming back because they're getting exactly what they want.
Right. Yeah.
Which is good for them, right? Versus other authors who recently read the interview with Neil Gaiman about Good Omens, and said he specifically didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
When he set up writing, he said, I specifically don't want to be cornered into that pigeonhole of he writes this kind of book. So he at the beginning tried very hard to make each book very different, and it worked wonderfully for him.
It really did.
So, there is many ways and things and target audiences as there are authors.
Yes.
You need to find out what works for you, and you need to express it. So, I gave some talks at writing groups here locally.
Yeah.
And I told them I'll start with the worst advice I can ever give to anybody.
Okay.
Which is, look at what I do and do exactly the same.
Oh.
And this is absolutely the worst, because no two authors are the same. And all the self-proclaimed gurus about, buy our sure method and do exactly what we tell you and you'll be a bestseller. It worked for them in a market that no longer exists, because 5 years ago, 3 years ago, the market was different than today. It will be different more by the time you finish your own novel. So yes, take a look at what they say, and maybe you can learn from it, but always be true to yourself. Because, don't try to copy someone else. It's just not going to.
No, that's good advice. Okay, writing process time. What is the worst part about writing a novel? And you can include the whole publishing process in this if you like.
I don't know. I mean, I do it because I enjoy it. So people come up when you ask them, why do you write? People come up with a myriad of reasons. Anything from to pay the bills, which it doesn't, not yet, to my head would explode and they would put me in an asylum if I didn't write. But for me, I write because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I literally write the stories I want to read. I'm a bit more of a discovery writer. I mean, when I start, I know what the novel is going to be about.
Yes.
but I have all the details of everything. And so I do discover the novel as I write the first draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy that process. And yes, there are moments when you go and it's like, oh my God, I wrote myself into a corner, and how am I going to get out? And why am I even bothering with all this when I could just be, reading someone else's book and enjoying it and stuff. But thankfully, those moments are reasonably rare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I've got my own shortcuts how to get past them.
Right.
So that's as far as writing. And then when you finish that novel, it's like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And then you start editing, and it's like, oh my God, how did I do this crap? But actually, for me at least, I enjoy the editing process. I've taught myself that. I look at the bits where I, look and say, oh my God, what's this cut? Are usually about either language, which my fat fingers just mangled on the keyboard, or like plot holes. So it's like, no, that couldn't have happened, because later it says, okay, I need to fix that. But overall, I actually enjoy reading the story. I enjoy editing because I'm rereading the story, which I like the story. So,
it's a story you wanted to write, or something that you wanted to read.
Yeah, and then comes the publishing, which working with a graphic designer is fun. I found a good designer. I gave it the original brief of it's a detective, it's a mystery, it's ancient Roman culture, and it's got fantasy elements. And she came up with the cover, which I loved. Bunny does. When I tried to find an image that would sort of suit the novel and then commission someone to do it, it did not work well. So that's why I said I trust my cover artist. I give her the brief, and I see what she comes back and say, ooh, this looks great, and can we tweak this a little bit? Can we tweak that a little bit? But she knows how to keep that. So that's a fun process. And book layout is something that I'm intimately familiar with. Or at least I'm as part of my day job, I'm intimately familiar with document structure. So learning book layout wasn't a big deal. So I do the layout. It's just a fun little exercise of cursing Adobe InDesign, but it's enjoyable to see the final product. And then the thrills of publishing, pressing the publish button, which I get better every time.
Yeah,
to get better. And then marketing, which can be a drag.
Yeah.
I've done it. Somebody please pay attention. So please write a read it. So that can be so passionate. But again, it's my job in IT is I'm a product manager. So I do technical bits, and do marketing bits, and I do sales bits, and customer relations bits.
So you're familiar with all of that.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like, and that was one of the reasons I chose self-publishing. Well, not exactly hybrid publishing in the beginning. Because I figured, you know what, I can do a lot of those things myself.
Right.
And as a new author, my chances are of getting one of the big publishers to pay attention is very, very slim.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's both paths. I mean, doing everything yourself, working with a hybrid publisher, or going after a traditional publisher, take a lot of perseverance. There's a lot of things you will do. A lot of them are hurry up and wait stages, different stages, but a lot of them have those hurry up and wait kind of stages. And it's just like with writing, choose the path that fits you. I was comfortable, so I didn't self-publish in a sense. But I didn't go after the big publishers.
Right.
So I do a lot of the things myself, but I have a hybrid publisher. It's a fully featured publishing house that provide the full services. And the only advantage that they give is I don't have to negotiate a contract because I own them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But otherwise, it's a business like any other thing.
Okay, interesting.
And I did help other authors. I did publish other authors through that as well. Yeah, so that with the business, I just don't have to negotiate my contract.
Right.
Or if I do, it's funny. Yeah. That suited me. So I took everything. I did it properly. I contracted freelance editors pull people's door off. I do the graphic design again. Everything I can't do, I pay people to do it for me.
Right.
And things that I can do well, like the initial writing and the
yeah, you probably shouldn't hire someone to do that.
Some people subcontract that too, and the book layout and the marketing, those things I do myself.
Okay. So any tips for people trying to get into the industry, and not so much on the traditional publishing side, but the hybrid or self-publishing?
Figure out what you can do, what suits you. Do the bits that you think you can do better. Learn about what it means to do them well.
Right.
And everything else just pay.
Okay.
And don't skimp. And the two most important things are an editor.
Yes.
And a cover designer.
Yeah.
Getting a friend who can read your books and find a few mistakes is not editing.
No.
Not even copy editing. Even if they're a really good friend, you need to learn to work with editors at the higher level, so developmental and line editors, and then copy editing and proofing. If you can't afford it, work with better reading groups.
Yes.
And at least provide you initial feedback without the outlay of money as far as story goes, but you do need that final copy editing and proofing to be done by someone. And with covers, it's really easy to find. I can tell by looking at the cover if it was your friend from high school who did a minor in art at college, if it was a job that you got on Fiverr, or if it was a professional cover designer who did it.
Yeah.
You can just tell all of those things that they really stand out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so editor and cover design. Always good to know. Yes. Unfortunately, the don't judge a book by its cover doesn't actually always apply. But
it's one of the most useless pieces of advice ever, because everybody judges books by the cover.
Yeah, exactly. What am I going to pick up? Yes, this looks nice. Exactly. Okay.
There are different constraints. So you're not a traditional publisher. You're not competing on catching eyes on a bookshelf in a store. You're competing on catching your thumbnail catching an eye and somebody scrolling on Amazon.
Right.
Most likely.
But even so, you'll get mixes of traditional published books and self-published books in that list itself. So
and you need to, and let's put it, the aim of the cover is to give the browser an immediate idea of what feel they're going to get.
Right.
So it has to be a little bit bland to match a particular genre.
Yeah.
Not too bland, but don't go too much out there. I mean, unless your name is Rowling or George Martin, then if you put whatever you want on the cover, people are just not going to notice because your name is just so big at the top.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, the cover just needs to give a feeling of what the book is about and make them, this looks like, a space opera, which I'm in the mood for, so I'll pick it up. Or that looks like a mystery novel, The Smoking Gun, so I'll pick it up because I'm in for that. And then once they pick it up, they read the blurb.
Yeah.
It's supposed to hook them in. So don't go into the plot. Don't name the characters because people barely know them, unless like it's a repeating series or something. But just going straight to the guts.
Yeah.
What it's about. And from then on, if you got to pick the book by the cover and read the blurb, then
you have a decent.
It's the first sentence, the first chapter that you need to get them reading and then keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so in terms of genres, what's your favorite story that you wish you had written?
One of my favorites, and I'll go for a blend as well, is a book called The Bridge of Birds.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's not well known, which is a shame because it should be deserves far greater fame than it got. It's set in an ancient China that never was.
Oh.
Tells the story of children in a Chinese village dying from, and one of the people from the village, a young man, goes and seeks out an ancient sage, and they go together to resolve the mystery, resolve what's happening. And it's a blame because it's a mystery sort of thing. It's got this mystical, paranormal thing because those things happen in that world, and it's an historical background from China.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
where my books tend to go on the dark side, that book is absolutely full of charm. And it's brilliant. It's
okay. I will have to go write that down and have a look at that because that sounds really interesting. Bridge of Birds.
He wrote Bridge of Birds by Barry Haghart.
Okay.
He wrote 2 sequels. I think he said he had 7 books planned, but ran into trouble with his publisher and never did the rest. Damn. The books are brilliant.
Oh, okay. Another reason to do it yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think by now he's 85, so I don't think we're likely to see those.
Probably not going to move that direction, no.
But the books were written, I think, in the 80s, and they're bloody brilliant.
Okay, I will have to go and see what that is about. That sounds really interesting. Okay, so overall, is there anything you would like to say to the world?
Hello, buy my books. Something that I've heard recently about. Well, it was specifically about children, but I think it applies at all too. Someone who doesn't like to read simply hasn't read the right books first. Yes. So keep trying. I mean, everyone's, but keep trying. Keep expanding your horizons. It's critical if you're an author. If you're an author, you absolutely have to read in and out of your genre. But even as a reader, just go out there, try things. There are wonderful ideas done in the indie community that just don't get seen. That's probably the biggest drawback of being an indie, is reaching the crowds. Even people who have amazingly original, witty, wonderfully written stories just find it hard to reach people. Just compete in the mass market paperback. So go out there and try, and many blogs and Goodread groups and whatnot, and try things. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? You could read a couple of chapters, didn't like it, and moved on. Right?
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Someone out there has written the book that will change your life, and you just haven't found it yet, or maybe you have. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you like Roman mysteries and fantasy, do try mine.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds fantastically entertaining, and I'm going to go have a read. All right. Thank you so much for doing this. It was really fascinating talking about a variety of topics that we need to learn more about.
Have you got anything published yourself? Or
yes. Technically, I have self-published 3 novels before I understood what it actually meant to be a self-published author. So 2 of them are waiting to be put out in a 2nd edition sort of style. And then I have a self-published sci-fi dystopian novel coming out in October, and plans for a fantasy novel coming out in February. So, oh boy, many things coming up.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, no, I've got my draft of the fantasy novel currently working on, hoping to finish that by the end of the summer and find a bunch of beta readers to tell me how good or bad it is.
Yeah, I put, well, like I said, it's a learning curve, and I've learned a lot of things the hard way. So I try to put a lot of advice on my blog, on a regular basis, so that anything from writing to editing to publishing, the technicalities of creating a book, just to help people.
Yeah.
So hey, if people read it and it helps them, it saves them and the money and unfortunate heartache that comes from not knowing those listen. So it's good.
All right.
Well, needs more books.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you so much. It was fantastic talking with you. I'm going to go check out all of your links as soon as I get them, so be prepared.
Okay. Awesome.